So if you have multiple customers, you're providing a service to this person and this person, well, who'd you make more money on? Do you track the expenses by the different customers? Did you track the revenue? How long did it take this company to pay you back? Or did you end up renegotiating the price and so now you made less money? So you have to track all of that. And it's not, it may sound daunting, but it's worse if you run out of money and then you have to close your business, or you don't know that you thought that this was this great, project that you sold. And particularly with your experience, because your revenue really comes and goes and it's very lumpy. So if you're not tracking that granularity, you're not seeing how it's going over time.
Absolutely, and it requires that level of planning. The understanding, one of the things that I understood as I went out looking for investment, both from banks and from institutional organizations, is they had an expectation that I knew my numbers cold. I knew cost of goods sold. How much does it cost me to sell my product? What is the variable costs associated with my business? If there's seasonality, how am I managing around that seasonality? When I've got core costs like, we have a learning management platform where all of our content lives, and there's a fee associated with that. That fee comes up quarterly. What is my planning process around that if I don't have an even flow of cash month to month? So what is my planning around that? When can I hire people on the basis of some of that lumpiness? And even more strategically, I know we're going to get there in a minute, but if you've got the right, I'm going to call it financial toolkit, which I think, Barbara, you put on this sheet as the accountant, the bookkeeper, and the CFO slash auditor. These are the people who can help you think strategically based on your numbers about where you can go, and more importantly, where you can't go. And it's really important to have that kind of structure in place, that you understand to the level of granularity that it's possible, how your expenses show up, what they are, what your burn rate is, which is another thing I would put up here. Like, everybody in my company knows what the monthly burn is. My VP of sales knows. If I hit this target, Michelle's gonna be smiling. If I don't hit that number, which not so much, right? Really important for my non-sales producing people to understand that as well in terms of when we can make investments. But the important, I think, element is, for me, and I may be skipping ahead, so you'll catch me if I am, is that the investment in these financial resources, whether it's QuickBooks, bookkeeper, accountant, is simply basic financial hygiene for your company that will allow you to go to banks, to go to investors, and to really know your business intimately to support its growth. And without that, it's a real challenge. You're dancing in the dark.
Yeah, and you can't actually leverage, if you have people in your network, in your community who do know their numbers, and they might be someone you would go to for advice. If you can't show them some clean books, that's gonna be the first thing they're gonna say to you is like, well, in theory, you're saying I'm gonna buy this product at X and sell it for Y, but show me your numbers. And the better your numbers are, the better actual advice you can get. And a lot of it, you can get it for free.
Barbara, you also talked about the importance of knowing where you're making money in your company. If you're tracking this data correctly, you'll know what your highest revenue generating products or services are. And you can strategically focus on pressing on doing more of that and less of the other thing, or eliminating things that feel sexy, right? We like to do them, but they're not actually generating income for you.
Yeah, and sometimes too, like those customers too, that it's good to have their name as a reference customer, but being aware that maybe they're not as profitable.
So one thing that every tech company knows is CAC, right? Cost of customer acquisition and lifetime value, right? So that's like common terminology in the tech world. I come from like the old economy sort of background. Those are the two best things that I take to all of my clients, no matter how old economy they are, no matter if they're defense contractors. Cost of customer acquisition is so important. every single business needs to understand and know that, but I think the tech world actually really made it, sort of solidified it into something as important as like the balance sheet and the P&L and the statement of cash flows. So what I really want to ask you about your customers, so like knowing your numbers isn't just about producing financial statements, it's about other aspects of your business. So for the CAC, you know, and the lifetime value, like number one, CAC is the cost of customer acquisition. So every period of time, month, quarter, it depends, you know, maybe if you have an Amazon Web Services and you're selling widgets, you know, through Amazon, maybe you do this weekly. You know how much money you're spending on sales and marketing, and you know what revenue is being generated from that, and how many customers, the value of the customer that you're getting from that. That's super, super, super important for you to watch. I have seen companies spend so much on PR, advertising, marketing, and it's not coming back to them, and they think that their issue is a marketing issue. Their issue is a product issue. They're either not finding the right audience or not enough people want to buy their product. You can't just prime the demand pump by spending more and more on marketing. If there's no need for the product, people are not going to buy the product. So as far as like the customer analysis, the CAC really is, you know, are you selling to each customer once and getting a lifetime value from that customer? Or are you selling once to each customer and then you have to go find a brand new customer? And either one of those can work, but you need to know what kind of business you're in. So from a sales perspective, if you don't know what I just asked, if you don't know the answers, then you probably need to spend more time understanding if that customer is gonna have follow-on value for you or not. And it's way easier for you to back up in the sales chain and say, okay, how can I find more of those one-time customers? So you're gonna spend less time marketing to that individual and more time marketing to your referral sources. So I'll give you the example of an eye surgeon versus a plastic surgeon. Everyone only has two eyes. They can only have cataract surgery twice. Mm-hmm. And then if you're an eye surgeon and you specialize in cataract surgery, you gotta find another patient, or you gotta wait for your existing patients to get old enough to need cataract surgery. Why do you think plastic surgeons make so much money? Because people start here, then they go here, then they go here,
There's
they
so
go
much to
here.
do.
So they have this repeat customer, and people like just keep coming back. So if the doctor can close the sale the first time, they have a really long lifetime value from that customer. And so if you think about it in those terms, you could really start to understand what you need to do, where you need to spend your money so that you can get the biggest bang for that on the sales side.
I'm gonna totally use that analogy another time. Because oftentimes we are looking at companies, when I look at companies, I am exactly looking to see, is this a transactional relationship with the customer, or are there other revenue opportunities? And one of the problems that I see a lot in the venture world is they try to push growth, and so they keep trying, they say, okay, attract more and more and more customers, when, you know, have you tapped out your existing customer base and all the other revenue opportunities? You may have sold them this one, maybe you sold them a product. Is there a related service? Is there another related product? Like, because selling to the customer who already knows you is a lot cheaper than trying to go out and find a new customer.
So much cheaper to work with someone that already trusts you and knows that you brought a good product to them. It's so much easier for them, and it's so much easier for you.
And I would say that's another data point that we have really focused on, is understanding repeat business. And we're able to tell year to year how many of our customers are in their second, third, or fourth purchase. And it gets back to the lifetime value of the customer, that you can really collect real-time data. So that when someone asks you, you can make a case for your growth projections on the basis of, again, financial data you're collecting.
And that's why in the little exercise box at the top of the handout we gave you is, like, you know, really ask yourself, like, what are you selling? And really break it down. Like, you know, what are the services? What are the products? What are all the different things? If you only have one thing you're selling, you know, you might want to think about, like, how do you expand that more? And then I like how you know, I used your actual language, is who you're selling to as opposed to who's your customer.
Right.
Because I think it's, even though that's a subtle turn of phrase, who you selling to is really, like, literally really who is buying. Because sometimes we offer service products and services where, you may not be the, you know, your customer may not be the user. And a classic example would be, you know, like providing services for children or something like that, like, you know, tutorial services. Well, you're not selling to the kid, you're selling to the stressed out parent who needs this done. So, like, who are you selling to? And making that distinction between like a user and your customer.
I wrote down a couple of givens that I think every business has to go through. And I wonder if I could share these with you. The first given is that you will make mistakes. The whole purpose of this hour is to get you thinking about how to stay alive as long as you can. I can assure you that the lower your spending compared to your revenue, the longer you will stay alive. It is a given that you will make mistakes. It is a given that you will have false starts. It is a given that you think you're gonna land a contract that doesn't come through. All companies make mistakes, and I only have to say New Coke for everyone in this room to laugh.
New Coke.
You can be so big and so profitable and screw things up so quickly. So we all make mistakes. The point is not that we don't make mistakes. We learn way more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. But you have to stay in the game, right? You can't let your mistakes end your company. The next thing is that you are definitely gonna spend money before you make money. The bigger that hole, if this is equity, and let's just say you have $10,000 that you put in, and then let's say you were able to borrow 20K, and I'm just using, so you start off with 30K of equity, and then you spend and you spend. So you're gonna get to a point where you're gonna go down here before you come back up. So you have to survive this. You have to survive when you are losing money. And you know, one of the biggest mistakes, like the bigger the hole, the harder it is to climb out of. And I have seen some really big holes in my 8-year career working with private companies. Me, you know, who knew everything about business when I went into business for myself, I signed a contract with Regis and didn't read the fine print. You need a magnifying glass to read the fine print, but nonetheless, shame on me. So it says very clearly that you have to give 60 days notice or they renew you at the same rate. So I signed a 1-year lease. Guess what happened on day 59? When the manager said, "Oh, I see you renewed your lease," I said, "I did not renew my lease." And she said, "Yes, you did. The deadline was yesterday." I was like, the entire revenue for the first year of my business, guess who got 100% of it? Regis. So it sucked. It really sucked. And so I'm, you know, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, you know, that's really bad. So I didn't make that mistake twice, okay? The next thing is that you are gonna find as an entrepreneur, there are so many ways and so many places to spend money that you think it's just gonna be the holy grail, the magic pill, it's gonna make your life easier. And you need to be very relentless about spending on busy versus spending on critical. So busy is stuff you shouldn't be working on. Critical is stuff you should be working on. Does this add revenue to my business? So it's really easy to spend money. It is really hard to sell. So I don't think that accountants really start businesses because they're very risk averse. All the people I know that have started companies are either salespeople or they're creative people. So they're graphic designers, you know, they're engineers, they're creative people. Business, like accounting people, they don't start businesses. They're like, oh, you know, they actually have to pick up the phone and call someone and say, oh, can I come and meet you for coffee? And they don't want to really do that. So, but we all sort of spend time on what we're comfortable with. And it's way easier to spend money. It is so easy to blow through $50,000. Like, you can do that in 3 or 4 months. And I can show you many businesses that have. And at the end of that period that you just spent your $50,000, you have no revenue. You don't have any repeat customers. You don't have line of sight to your next customer. So you really, really, really need to think about how to get revenue into your business. How can you get enough of a product together that someone that's going to start buying it?
Yeah, it goes to the whole, like, you will never regret the time you spend on customer discovery. Customer discovery, talking, asking for feedback about your product and your idea. You will never regret that time, and it is free. It is taking just your time. The more customer discovery you do, the better your product is, because once you actually make something or have a service that's offered and whatever you're doing, like, once you've already done that and you've invested that time, well, you might have to then go back and rework it. So finding out who's your customer, what does your customer really want, and being in love with, I always say the other thing is being in love with the problem that you want to solve, not your solution. Because you might find that, you think you have a solution for a particular problem, but there's actually something else better over here. So being in love with the problem that you're trying to solve.
That's really good advice. I think that early in my entrepreneurial arc, and I joined this company as CEO in 2014, our culture was that we loved our baby. Our baby was cute. And we wanted everyone to fall in love with our product as it existed in that moment. And we were toned down when customers were saying, well, what I really like is, and it took us about a year to get out of that, product notion. Okay, we developed this product, it's done.
Now let's sell it.
Let's go, right? And that's not a productive way to stay in business. There's need to innovate and have enough capital or enough revenue to do that. But listening to your customers across, throughout the process is essential. It really is. But I think that's one mistake people make, is they don't put enough money in their expense line for discovery, for innovation, for new product development, new service. They don't put enough money in servicing clients, account management.
Yeah, and usually, and a lot of stuff, that's just time that you need to spend. Oh, the other interesting thing too is, depending on what you're selling, people, the customer feedback is really gonna be interesting, because they may be lying or not, like, even able to answer that. Cause I know people, they say, like, is it Steve Jobs or somebody said, like, no, it's Henry Ford. If I asked people what they really wanted, they would ask for faster horses, instead of making the car or whatever. There's that thing. But it's also things like, people just don't know. They've always done something a certain way, and you may have a different solution. So it's just good to sort of see, like, oh, what are the barriers that I would have selling my product? Because this is something totally different. Maybe. You may not be offering something totally different, but I can tell you, first mover advantage, not where you want to be.
And
it's very expensive.
And it also speaks to why so many things we probably use in our daily life, like, have a freemium model out there, because if they didn't give it for free, you would never even use it. So the fact that that these companies have enough balance sheet to offer a freemium model just to get people primed to use the product, that in itself, look, we're not all lucky enough to be able to do stuff for free, but if you could think about, if I have to let my customer use it for free in order for it to sell, do I want to be in that business? And I think that's sort of more, like, if that's what's required to get this concept that's so novel adopted, am I willing to be in that business?
Yeah, and I think also the presumption too, for example, if you say you're offering a service and you're like, I'm gonna offer this pilot for free to this customer, people assume that they should just offer it for free, and it's like, I believe all pilots should be paid, a pilot program, because, they need to have some skin in the game. They need to, like, really be able to test it out. And first of all, I always give the analogy, like, if you offer something for free, people will eat it. Like, people will buy it or consume it. Like, I was thinking about the pizza example. This is what I always say, like, we had pizza here at lunch, so we all ate pizza, right? If you actually have your money to spend for lunch, how many of you are gonna buy pizza? Probably not a lot of us. So, I know I wouldn't. And so it's like, I haven't tested anything. By giving you free pizza, I would say 100% of Boston loves pizza. No, I know that if there's nothing else to eat and this is what we have, this is what we eat. So I haven't tested anything. I don't know what my customer really wants for lunch, and I don't know how much they're willing to spend, because I gave them free pizza.
And my mother, my mom and dad were both self-employed. My dad actually was an eye surgeon. He actually had a very successful practice. And my mom was a CPA, actually, so she had a small CPA practice. And when I was starting off, she said to me, she said, you know what, Valerie, you can fill up your day for free all day long. She said, it's getting people to pay you, that's the hard part. And when I sort of realized that, you know, it's like, it makes you bold. Like, you say it, you're like, okay, but I need, you know, this is my hourly rate, and it's probably gonna take, you know, 20 or 30 hours. Guess what people do? They're like, okay, send the contract. You know, if you bid against yourself, and you say, you know what, I'll do it for free, they're like, great. It's like, I think you just lowered the price to 0 by yourself. So, you know, your time is important. You only have 2 resources. You have time and you have money. So you need to use your time on the things that are critical, and you need to use the money on the things that are critical.
So one thing we talked about, like, so if you're building sort of your financial team, which could be people who work for you, but also advisors. So I thought, we talked a little bit about that, because one of my pet peeves is when people have bookkeepers in charge of accounting, and not accountants in charge of accounting. So if you think about when you're building out your team, you know, like, what is an accountant? And so I have some questions, like, you can ask people. So what's a CPA? You wanna give that definition?
Yeah, so I'll just give you, there's bookkeepers, there's accountants, there's CPAs, and then there's CFOs. Bookkeepers are generally people that do the books for companies. They generally don't have accounting degrees, okay? So they could have a liberal arts degree, they could have an education degree. There's all kinds of people that do bookkeeping. They're very good at it. They're quite frankly like the muscle of the organization. So you really kind of want a bookkeeper, because that's like you're gonna get the most work for the lowest amount of money from a bookkeeper. However, bookkeepers can't work in a silo. So an accountant is someone who has an accounting degree and understands, you know, GAAP principles, like
GAAP means
generally accepted accounting principles. This is why audited financial statements exist, because all the financial statements are on the same basis everywhere, so that one person doesn't say revenue is something, you know, they're collecting next year, and I'm saying revenue is something I'm collecting this year. So it's the same basis. A CPA is someone that's passed the CPA exam, so it's someone that has an accounting degree and has passed the CPA exam and has generally 2,000 or 4,000 hours of working for an actual CPA firm. So there's sort of like this hurdle that you need to become a licensed CPA. And then a chief financial officer sometimes has an accounting background, but usually chief financial officers are very forward-looking. Accountants tend to be backward-looking, but I will assure you that you can't do any forward-looking stuff well if you don't have good books and records. So if you're working with a pile of stinking, you know what, you can't forecast your way out of a paper bag. So if you have really good, you need good financial results, like on historical, in order to do good forecasting.
And so I sort of made a note, which I don't know if you would agree with it, but that you wanna hire an accountant first before hiring a bookkeeper. Because you need an accountant to sort of help you think about how you lay it all out and how, you know, set the parameters. And then your bookkeeper will just sort of execute, because the bookkeeper is gonna be like, okay, here are all the expenses, and they're gonna do all that stuff you don't wanna do, like doing your expense reports and all that kind of stuff.
There's one thing you should put up there, chart of accounts.
Yeah, that's really important. I spend pretty much every client that I go to work with, the first thing I do is I revise their chart of accounts. So I find that what happens if you just have like a bookkeeper or even like an accountant set up your chart of accounts is that you basically end up with 300 different accounts, and it's so granular that it doesn't make any sense to the business owner. So I start grouping those into things that make sense.
Because chart of accounts, like the way to think about it is basically like line items or like how you're categorizing things. So if you don't have a sort of discipline set up in advance, you just end up with a mess. Like, oh, I don't know what kind of expense this is, let me just create a new account.
Right, so it can either be too generic, so it could be like, you know, utilities, right? And everything goes in there, cell phone, electricity, water bill, like Wi-Fi, everything, or it can be too granular, which is electricity, cell phone, Wi-Fi, like, there has to be the right balance, you know, of like information that's useful to the business owner. Because I can tell you, finance people aren't the ones running the businesses, and when I sit down with the business owner, their eyes glaze over. I'm sure people in this room, your eyes are glazing over now. You're like, all this numbers talk. So, but you really just wanna create financial statements that make sense to you, and that you can actually use in your business to make better business decisions. That's the whole point of it, besides the fact that the IRS requires you to keep books and records.
How are we doing?
Quarterly tax